Hi everyone, and welcome to Pod of the Damned. I'm your host Ian. Joining me as always is the rest of the trio. We are joined by Nico. How's it going, buddy?
Not bad. How's you?
It's fine. I purposely did you first because you were like, "Oh, by the time you do your intro, I'll be ready." Because you were
And I
sending
was.
messages, and you were okay.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I was literally putting my phone down at the same time. I still answered. So, fuck you.
Also joining us
Gina,
as
tell him. Tell him.
is this the cat you just sneezed on 10 times?
I only sneezed on her once. The rest of the time, my mouth was covered.
All right, okay, nice.
That's love, though.
Also joining us is the other member of the trio. It's Candy. How's it going?
Pretty groovy. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. So today, obviously, we hinted about it in our last episode. We're talking about probably the most famous horror movie of all time, the most infamous horror movie of all time. I think any way you want to interpret that. So I've been excited to talk about this for like a really long time. I hope you guys have been excited about it too.
Oh yeah.
It is my choice of movie this week, and Nico, you've given me a lot of shit because this is my choice because you actually suggested we cover this movie quite some time ago, and
Yeah.
it was just one of those instances where it kind of fell by the wayside. Where I think it was
And you stole it.
it was during like one
No.
of those times where like we were really struggling to get like recording dates in, and so it just fell by the wayside, and we moved on, and now I've stolen it. So yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
before we talk too much about
At
that,
least you admit you stole it. I didn't think you
listen,
did. I
listen,
pressed that.
listen. Of course I would. Of course I would. But before we get into that, don't forget we are a horror podcast that deep dives into a different topic every single week in our quest to create a leaderboard of the best and worst horror movies of all time. This is episode number 112, and in today's show, we're talking all about 1973's The Exorcist. Before we do that, we'll do some housekeeping, get the socials out the way. If you can follow us on X/Twitter at Damned Podcast. We're on Facebook and Instagram, Pod of the Damned. You can email us at podofthedamned@gmail.com. You can subscribe to us on Patreon, patreon.com/Pod of the Damned. And we're also on YouTube and TikTok as well, so you can find us there. Nico, since you don't know, you can catch Nico on X at Nico22Ross, which I had to look up just to remind myself about what your Twitter handle was, but I figured it out. Candy, where can people find you?
On X, I'm at Candy Final Girl. On Instagram, it's Candy the Final Girl. Those are usually where I'm at. I'm also on Pot of the Damned X account sometimes, and I cross post with our Instagram. So any other links are on my link tree. It's linktree/Candy the Final Girl.
Awesome. Right. I'm not gonna.
I'm on Instagram now, but I couldn't tell you if it did.
You're such a technophobe.
I'm not a technophobe. I prefer mingling with people in person.
Okay. Okay. I'm not gonna.
Definitely our age group right there.
I like actual talking to a physical person instead of messaging.
Okay. Well, what does this count as? Because we're on a Zoom call right now, Nico.
It
And
still counts as like
Yeah.
in person. It's not like because it's not like just like texting or talking, like
Exactly.
retweeting somebody or something. I can go
Texting.
both ways. Like just everything about me, I go both ways. So I can do either.
Well,
Texting can be interpreted multiple ways when folk are reading it. Whilst this, you can see their body language
yes,
and
but
understand what they're on.
remember, Nico, without all of these social media accounts and all the people who talk to us on social media accounts, this podcast wouldn't even exist.
And I've met some really great people that like you guys, just from being on X and stuff like that, or like how I met Sarah, we've become
Mhm.
really good friends, or Ren, or people like that who commented. So like I get to spend time with them on like Zoom, and we meet up or whatever. So that's pretty cool. So it does lead to that.
Yeah.
I'm not like my kids or all my friends are online, definitely Gen Z stuff, but I do like to eventually see people's faces and body language.
Right.
And I do respond to people on it because there was two people that got in touch with me.
When? Is this like episode 2?
No, I was like one of them, but it was the girl that I told you about who just was asking stuff like recommend horror movies for her
Uh-huh.
because she liked my taste. And then there was the dude that
You met someone
messaged
else
me
with the
wanting
same
his one.
taste as you?
Yeah,
Oh.
she asked for like recommendations, so I gave her like films that she hadn't heard of.
Did you
There
recommend?
was only one she didn't like.
Did you recommend?
You're like Army of the Dead.
I was about to say, did you
Oh yeah,
recommend Army of the Dead?
totally, yeah. Bit of fun.
I love how you picked it and you're like, I don't even like this. I'm like, why are you doing this to me?
Hey, it was a fun episode, I was told.
It was a fun episode. When I get pissed and fuck a movie up, I go all the way.
Listen, I think the most funnest episodes we've ever done have been movies we hate. You know, Troll 2 is always Troll 2 was a really fun episode. And or movies you just disagree about the most. It's a Wonderful Life, despite not being a horror movie, I think will go down possibly as the most infamous episode.
If we had been a trio at that time, that would have been absolutely fucking wild. That would have been like bringing a foreign object into the ring.
It was pretty wild. As things go, it was a pretty wild. Nico, I was literally ready to end.
You want to hit me? Yeah.
I was so ready to end that episode halfway through, and then just put a disclaimer out after it, being like, "Nico is no longer with us. I'm sorry." Anyways,
so Candy, do you like it?
Do I like it? I fucking love that movie.
Anyways,
right. I love classic films. It's a long story. I love classic films, not a secret. We'll have to talk about that another time, though.
Yes.
Okay.
I have many things to say.
Let's get into the movie, because, you know, I don't want to reopen old wounds, Nico. So today's show, we're talking all about The Exorcist. This movie was released in 1973, was directed by William Friedkin, stars Ellen Bernstein, Max von Sydow, and Linda Blair. The IMDb plot is as follows. When a young girl is possessed by a mysterious entity, her mother seeks the help of two Catholic priests to save her life. Now, I think when we were chatting last week, Candy, we did kind of bring up the score for this movie. I can't remember what the context of that conversation was, but we brought up the score in this movie.
Tubular Bells.
Tubular Bells.
We kind of went on a sidebar about some great scores.
Yeah, and, you know,
somehow
us going on a sidebar is something that happens, you know, relatively often.
Especially with me on board, it's going to happen.
It's like, I'm pretty sure our 2-hour-long episode only actually contained 55 minutes of top 5 chat. But
a lot of great extra info.
I listened to it at work and it was good.
Oh, thanks for your seal of approval there, Nico.
Nobody came at me for Suspiria 2018, so thank you guys.
Yeah, see,
I was daring people. I was like, "Come at me, let's go."
I told you it would get more love. Anyways, I think we got into a conversation about. I think we were talking about John Carpenter is what we were talking about, and we were talking about his great scores.
Yes,
and we got into a bit of a debate about, you know, probably the two of the most iconic scores in horror is Halloween and The Exorcist. And
the third would be Psycho.
Yeah, so I think, like, so I put out a poll. I don't know if, I know, Nico, you're not really on Twitter that much. Candy, I don't know if you saw the poll that I put out. So I put out a poll on our Twitter, basically asking our listeners to decide for us which is the more iconic score. Is it Halloween, The Exorcist, and I put a third option just as something else. So if they wanted to comment, they could. And it was nowhere near as close as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be really neck and neck and really tight. It was not. So the other category got 8% of the votes, which, fair enough, to be expected. In second place was The Exorcist with 17% of the votes, with Halloween...
Really? I thought it would be the other way.
With Halloween winning with 75% of the vote. So it got like way more, and I thought that was going to be like a neck and neck poll, because I'd done another poll like a few days before about horror villains that weren't like the big three, and like that was like a neck and neck poll like all the way. I think it actually finished in...
I was like Leatherface.
Well, Leatherface tied with Ghostface for that one. But yeah, so Halloween score and like, listen, I tend to agree with that, but I didn't think it would be anywhere near on the disparity as it actually was in the end there. So that was a big surprise for me.
You know, I do have a theory about that, and it is that, you know, Carpenter still scores all of the Halloween films, because that's basically what he does now, is just do music. And there's always updated versions, and we still got Halloween. Like, they tried to bring The Exorcist back with this newer thing. I'm not going to talk about that right now. But anyway.
Oh, we will talk about it, though.
Oh, it's going to be talked about. I don't want to go straight for that right now. Not the jugular, not yet. But anyway, so I think Halloween's kept current. Especially with the latest trilogy by that asshole, that person, David Gordon Green. Don't like him. Anyway, but yeah, I think it's just because it's still like current, it's still in the zeitgeist, and The Exorcist, like nobody really touched it after The Exorcist 3 for a very long time. And then when they did recently, like that didn't go so well. So I think Tubular Bells is much more like, if you ask my mother, who's like a boomer, like she would say Tubular Bells, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? But I think it's kind of passe now.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I'm surprised because I genuinely thought Tubular Bells, because it was such a big hit, it would have been like
but then,
right up there.
but like, well, I mean, Halloween wasn't a hit on the scale that The Exorcist was, but in terms of
No, I just mean the soundtrack,
yeah,
like the soundtrack Tubular Bells, that was huge.
yeah.
Yeah, it was in the 70s. My mom was all about that shit.
And the
So,
thing is, it wasn't even that popular until the movie came out.
mhm,
It was just like a slow burn. It was like basically mid charts, and then the film came out and just shot straight up.
yeah. So I thought that was an interesting thing just to sort of kick us off with there, because it's something that I'd thrown out to our followers and listeners and see what they had to say, and like I say, it was a very surprising result for me. So, anyways, we're here to talk about The Exorcist, one of the most not even just like one of the most famous horror movies of all time, one of the most famous movies of all time. This is definitely a horror movie
Yeah.
that sort of transcends the genre. It is very much in the sort of zeitgeist that everyone knows, even if people haven't seen it, everyone knows what The Exorcist is, everyone knows what it's about. It is absolutely seeped into popular culture. um I want to know, like, when did you guys like first see it? Like, how old were you guys, if you just can remember when you first saw this? Because I came into this movie, like, obviously I knew about The Exorcist. I didn't actually watch The Exorcist for the first time until I was about 22.
Oh wow.
So I was
So
like,
that's like an interesting experience. Like for me, like my mom, I have kind of a funny story about it. My mom thinks she's so clever or whatever. It was kind of clever looking back, but I was 10 years old and my best friend, we were best friends for 33 years till she passed away, but she would spend Friday nights with me and my mom would bring home like, we get to pick a couple of movies and she'd pick movies that were recommendations, all horror. And she's like, you have to watch The Exorcist. You've never seen it. I'm 10 years old. I'm still in like primary school, like I'm not even in middle school yet. At least the way my school was. It went all the way up to sixth grade and then seventh and eighth, but whatever. So my mom makes green Kool-Aid of all things. I'm like, I want a fucking soda. What do you like? I didn't say that, but I was like, why are you green Kool-Aid? I mean,
That would have been so cool. I want a fucking soda.
my
What?
mom made us green Kool-Aid and she's like, no, we're drinking green Kool-Aid tonight. Just trust me on this. And I'm like, all right. So she made a big event about it. So we're watching the movie. She's over there smoking a joint. And and like we're absolutely just like out of our mind scared. And then we understand the green Kool-Aid. I was like, oh, you crafty bitch. So it was kind of fun, but it scared the shit out of me. I was 10 years old and I like slept with the fucking lights on.
Can I just say,
Plus, I grew up Catholic. I just want to throw that out there. I grew up Catholic. So there's an extra layer, I think, when you're Catholic, and I can talk about that more later with particularly with William Peter Blatty and all that.
sorry to
Yeah, that,
sidebar there, but Nico, could you have looked any more Scottish there in your orange fucking jersey, drinking out of a 2 litre bottle of Iron Brew?
it's a Chicago Bears top.
It's just
and,
I just wanted to point that out.
and no advertisement here at all.
No product placement. Can we get sponsored by
Yeah,
Iron Brew?
none. Exactly. I'd love
I
it.
guess I'm sponsored by Animal Crossing.
Have you ever drank Iron Brew, Candy?
Is it a beer?
No, it's a soft
No.
drink. It's a
It's,
soft
it's,
drink.
it's this.
Oh,
It's
I've
it's
never
it's
even heard
this.
of it.
It's Scotland's Coca-Cola.
Oh, okay. So but it's orange flavored, right?
No,
No, you actually get in America, by
you
the
do
way.
get it in a so. It's really, really difficult. This is way off topic, but it's really, really
So
difficult to describe the
Okay.
flavor of Iron Brew because it doesn't have
It
like
looks like it would taste like Sunkist or something.
so
Green.
every American I know that's tasted it says they think it tastes like a
Cream.
bubble gum they had as a kid.
I
Oh, okay. Well, now I gotta try some, but I'll have to track
well,
it down.
I've also heard quite a lot of like especially Americans say that it tastes a bit like cream soda as well.
Oh, damn. Okay, that sounds really good, actually.
Um, so
In
it's not.
international market, but at Walmart, most of them have got it.
It's so Scotland is like this is like a fun fact. Scotland's like I think one of only two countries in the world where Coca-Cola is not the most popular drink.
I'm
Yeah.
actually I like Coke, but I go back and forth between Coke and Pepsi, which is weird. I'm drinking a Pepsi right now, but they have like these real sugar ones, so they're like the cane sugar, And so they taste like the old school, like, soda fountain type stuff. So I have to dig to find them. They're like a specialty thing. They're not like regular Pepsis. They're like these cane sugar, yummy, delicious, terribly bad for you things. So I've been drinking those because the Coke ones they don't make anymore. So just
what
I'm a Pepsi guy.
I'm whatever's available.
I go both ways on everything. I like Coke. I like Pepsi.
What you should do? You should do.
I like Coke too, but I prefer Pepsi.
You should do a reaction video, Candy. Get your hands on some Iron Brew and do a reaction video.
I'll have to look up where I can find some because now I'm curious.
I'll look up after the show and see if I can find like places that you can get them from. Anyways, people are listening to this. People are listening to this episode, and it's just been massively
like, what the fuck?
massively derailed like 6 minutes into the conversation about the movie. Nico, what about you? Like, how old were you when you first saw this? What was your reaction?
So no surprise, you can guess when I first saw it. I was a little kid at primary school, and it was in my mate's house when we used to sneak away at lunchtimes and watch stuff,
So you were about a similar
So,
age
yeah.
then.
I think I was about 9.
Yeah, so you were similar.
And I remember this one, it was just me, 3 girls, and 1 guy watching it. And then the follow, because we couldn't watch them all in just one section, so we'd have it like half watched.
Okay.
And I remember thinking this is one I've got to watch from start to finish because it fucking terrified me. So I actually managed to get a shot of it from him.
Mm-hmm.
He's like sneaked that away, fucking watched it myself. And my then girlfriend Paula, me and her watching it, and she was terrified.
Just
So, yeah.
a little 9-year-old couple.
Yeah.
Watching
I thought boys were ghosts when I was like 15.
A 9-year-old couple watching.
Oh no, it's just a joke one,
Watching
that one when girls grabbed you. You're my boyfriend now. Okay.
Well, yeah,
Oh,
I would hope so. It's just interesting because, like, I was saying, like, I've obviously come to this like much later. Obviously, I was very much aware and I'd seen lots and lots of clips of the movie, but I just never sat down to watch it like from beginning to end. And obviously, when this movie came out, it caused so much controversy. It was banned from so many places. It became infamous, really, didn't it, as like this sort of shocking horror movie. But watching it now, obviously in 2024, it might not have that same level of impact. So again, does this maybe go down to what we were talking about earlier as well about, Halloween being more relevant when it came to that conversation? Because we haven't really had anything decent since Exorcist 3. We had that TV show that came out, but I didn't really fuck with that too much. And then you had 1/3 of a trilogy from David Gordon Green. They
got scrapped, and now Mike Flanagan's handling it, and I'm like, I trust that man with everything, so you do that thing.
Yeah, Nico, you trust him as well, don't you? You like Mike Flanagan.
Oh hell
yeah.
Yeah.
So like,
it'll be interesting to see what he does.
How do you feel though, like a younger viewer, if like someone who's maybe of a similar age or maybe a little bit older, and they were to watch The Exorcist now for the first time?
I actually have a hands-on experience with that. Ash, he was, the girls mature faster. So I have a daughter and a stepdaughter. They're in their 20s now. But like when they watched it, they fucking loved it. They were scared to death, like in a great way. And then Ash was a little bit coming like late, my son, who's my youngest, and I showed it to him probably 2 years ago. And it was after it was over, like, I'm just like going through like, oh wow, this is such a great movie. He's like, that was it. I was like, get out of my house. I mean the fuck, but kids these days, like, he likes analog horror, like Skinamarink, and there are other things that he likes. Like, we just watched Donnie Darko again because Joe Bob showed it this past week on the last drive-in. He likes different kinds of movies, but The Exorcist is just not his jam, and I think it's a little harder to impress kids these days. My girls were totally into it, but my son, no. He was just like, that's boring, and it wasn't good, and it wasn't scary. And I'm like, what? I mean, it really, that was like the most upsetting. I was like, how could you say this? But I don't think, like Gen Z, and I don't know anything about Gen Alpha. My kids are all Gen Z, but I just think that they're into different shit. And they haven't grown up with these kind of movies, and the shit that they did grow up with, unless they had like a parent like me showing them cool shit, they really have a different kind of taste. Now, just Ash, it just wasn't his jam. I guess he doesn't get into possession movies or something. I don't know. But for me, there's only really one that's fantastic. Oh, and that would be The Exorcist. But yeah, so Gen Z, I think it's split.
Well, there was a 20-year-old I recommended this to, and she was like, "Oh yeah, it's good, but when was it fucking made? In the 40s, 50s?" And I'm like,
What?
"Are you shitting me?" She genuinely thought it was like that long ago because of the medical bit, with all the stuff that's happening there.
I mean,
She's like, "No, that they don't use that shit nowadays. Surely, fuck." And I'm like, "Oh my god, I feel fucking old."
the thing is though, that's probably like one of the few areas of the movie that actually really dates it is the scenes
Yeah.
in the hospital, because obviously you've got like this really old medical equipment that they're using that's outdated and doesn't really get used anymore. You've got the doctor literally lighting up a cigarette right in front of us, right in front of Chris as he's diagnosing our daughter.
Like, why
with,
can't they do that to me? Like, they won't let me smoke when I had to go in the hospital for surgery. Fuck.
So I think that obviously dates it. But I think aside from that, because one of the things I think this movie does incredibly well is it keeps it simple. Like everything is really simple. Like when you look at things that's going, but it executes it all pretty much perfectly, and that's they just focused on getting the basics right, and they got them absolutely spot on. And I think as well at the time, because again, obviously you got to remember it's early 70s, and this is maybe where you can come in with, being brought up a Catholic, Candy, where religion was much more prevalent, especially sort of Christianity, and amongst sort of younger people and families than it remotely is now.
Yeah, and there's some neat background to that. I love the book, The Exorcist. William Peter Blatty wrote that. He's a Catholic, and I grew up Catholic, and it's I still feel very at peace in the Catholic Church. I'm an atheist. Been an atheist since I was a kid, but I kind of had to still go through my confirmation and all that shit. But it was like there's something ceremonial to Catholic stuff, and I really feel like Rosemary's Baby walked so this movie could run, because it was a couple of years before, maybe what, 4 years before, five, um, and also a good book. But yeah, I think William Peter Blatty like really puts good Catholicism stuff in there. All the details aren't in the film. The book is totally worth the read. It's actually genuinely fucking scary. But yeah, I mean, a lot of that, like I like that he took the aspects of a non-religious person. When they're going through all these tests and all these things, it's not psychological. It's not something in the brain. It's not this. Maybe just see an exorcist. Like, I don't know, talk to a priest. And he's like, well, fuck, we're not religious.
Mm-hmm.
And so, bringing in the Jesuits, which are a branch of the Catholics, Mill branch, and they're really prevalent there in like Washington D.C., Georgetown area. I just like that he had like all the history and the knowledge to bring to it, and we get this great thing, and people were like fainting, and we're talking about the controversy that people are fainting and people are freaking out about this because you just don't do shit like this. You don't show things like this, and so every decade or so it seems like a movie comes along that does that. And Exorcist was one of the biggest ones because people were like, oh my God, demonic possession. Really, the start of the satanic panic is really, these are the roots of
Yeah.
it. And religion just kind of ebbs and flows. And people back then, yeah, there was a lot more prevalent Christianity, not a lot of open atheists or agnostics or anything like that. You could say you're not religious, but hey, I was brought up Episcopalian, or I was brought up Baptist, or hey, I was raised in the Catholic Church. But now a lot of us are like, yeah, I'm a fucking atheist or whatever. But even as an atheist, it doesn't affect how I feel about this film. But I think, having the background of Catholicism and, talk about the Black Mass, there are certain signs when you have to because you have to get permission to do the ritual of exorcism, which they rarely give. You have to have certain signs. So there's the desecration of the church. There's these certain signs. They are all in the rites of the exorcism. And there's a part of, the Catholicism that has that. And it's a really interesting read if you ever want to dig around and find out. But so that's why he starts sort of like, he's a psychiatrist, obviously our main character, Father Damien, like who's Jason Miller's amazing in this. But like, he's losing his faith, it brings all this interesting stuff. But in the end, it's kind of pro-religion. It's pro-Catholicism. Nothing else saved her. And then even like when they interviewed William Peter Blatty about like, oh, well, you're a Satanist or something. He's like, no, I'm a Catholic. He was Catholic. So I think that that's interesting. But yeah, they found out there, they're kind of like little bits in there, but you kind of have to look for them, like desecration of the church being one thing. The signs of the demonic possession, that there's a demon there. And we've got, Father Marin, who is also seeing the signs, like where they're showing those little pieces, like the dogs fighting, and he's at the archaeological dig, and that's the sign. There's all these weird little things that are specific into the exorcism part of the Catholic Bible that he knows. That's why he comes back from the dig. He knows it's going to happen, and he's encountered this demon before. So it's pretty cool. Neat background stuff, I guess.
You bringing up the dig thing, I can't remember which podcast it was, but it was a different podcast, and they said that it was like racist, the start of it. And I was fucking broken. I'm like, no, that's just how they do the dig back then. That's all I thought to myself, you know what I mean? Like, I remember the girl saying, oh, it's a very racist way to start the movie. No, it's just they didn't have bulldozers and fucking shit readily available in every country back then.
No, that was sort of an underdeveloped country at the time, but there, it is part of the Holy Land, technically, because the Holy Land between like the Muslim faith and anything Judeo-Christian, they're all kind of in the same areas,
Yeah.
and in the Middle East. So it's Holy Land for several religions, and honestly, that's why there's a lot of wars still fought over there. But I won't go into that too much. But anyway, so I don't think that it's racist. I think that they're doing the dig, and he's obviously there as a Jesuit priest, a Catholic priest, because there's going to be relics that are going to be relevant to his faith as well as to the faith of the workers, the Muslims.
Exactly, yeah. And that's the thing I found hysterical about it. It's like, yeah, does everyone think nowadays that like how they do digs is exactly how they did it back then? When I was a fucking kid, they found something in Aberdeen. And even then, it was just a heap of folk with shovels and that was in Aberdeen. That wasn't a fucking third world country at the time.
Wow,
you know what I mean?
Wow, come on, Nico. We live in Aberdeen. Like, that could be considered third world in some places.
I don't know. I think Indiana's third world a little bit. Okay.
So
live in the asshole of America.
So yeah, like I just think it's a really interesting sort of point of this discussion to have, is that sort of like that religious background, that Christianity background, and also like I was saying, that difference in time frame between people as youngsters watching it in the mid to late 70s and beyond to watching it now, and how that can differ on the experience you have as things. It's like, how many times have either of you guys seen a movie when you were growing up and you think that movie's fucking ace, that like that's so incredible, and then you watch it again years later as an adult and you're like, that was a bit shit, and it's just an interesting, and obviously talking about how differently your kids reacted there as well, Candy, that really sort of drives that point home a little bit. But
so I'm going to throw the cat amongst the pigeons.
Oh, here you go. Oh, it's not like you.
Even when I watched this as a kid, I genuinely felt let down by the ending, because the ending just happened way too quick for me, I thought. And that's the only bad point in the movie that I had. But don't get me wrong, I still loved the movie.
Are we talking about...
It's just everything that happened so fast.
Are we talking about Father Karras throwing himself out the window ending, or...
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually really like it, but for different reasons, I guess. I like how it goes, how it's quick, because I think it shows that we know that Father Karras is struggling with his faith. We overhear that. I mean, it's much more poignant in the book, but I mean, when Chris McNeil's walking by and she notices this priest, he's a good-looking guy, was a boxer and all that shit, but he's saying like, I feel like like I'm being fake. I don't know if I feel this. I'm a psychiatrist. What am I doing? I don't know if I'm right for the priesthood or anything like that. But then for him, like Father Marin dies, and this demon's, this girl's gonna die, and he's like, come into me, and it happens really quick. You see it, and it takes over him, and then he's like very quickly kind of pulls himself together, and he gains his faith back right there. You see it so quick in his eyes, and he's like, no. So he throws himself out because he's like, I'll kill myself, and then demon can't go anywhere.
I get it, but it's just I was disappointed by it. I'd rather have seen him fight with the demon a bit longer. Just that.
But then I
don't think he would have lasted.
But that's
neither do I.
That's what I was saying.
It would have been good to see a little bit.
But then I think as well you've got to remember about again the limitations of what you can do in the 1972 when they will have recorded it. You know, you're saying that you wanted to fight that demon.
Yeah.
It's maybe something that they're just were not able to realistically pull off in the same vein as the way they'd managed to do the rest of the movie. You know,
Well,
and
also we're talking about a long movie too.
yeah, this
So
movie.
if we saw all, the focus being on the girl to give the biggest shock effect, to give the biggest, I hate the innocents being slaughtered here. And then, if we were to go into a second battle inside of a priest, like that's a whole different movie. And we get that movie with the third,
Mm-hmm.
I
think as well, because like that whole exorcism scene is like 9 minutes long as well. So we've just come off like this really sort of taxing scene. Like this is really the sort of culmination of everything that's happening in this movie. And like you say, I think the fact that the possession of Father Karras happens and he throws himself out the window really quickly. It does, I think, show a number of things. Number one, it shows, like you were saying, Candy, I agree with you. Like, he's got his faith back, but I think it also shows a lot about his actual character as a person, because we see Father Karras throughout the movie, and he's distant at times because he's losing his faith, he's lost his mother, he's going through a really difficult time in his life, and when it gets to that point where he has the choice to take the demon in and throw himself out the window to save this girl, he makes it in a split second, but also makes it probably knowing that it's his only chance that he's going to have, because the demon is so powerful that it will just take him over.
And a scene that gets me emotionally, like, because like right after that, we've got Father Dyer, who's his friend, his best friend, comes over and says, do you ask God for forgiveness for offending him? Which, suicide is an offense to God, especially in the Catholic religion, but pretty much all religions. So he's confessing, but he can't even talk. It's just the hand, and it's just, I don't know, it's very emotional, and he's shaking and crying, and it's just like, oh my God. But he did the damn thing, like, all that journey that he went through, like in the last minute, he gets his faith back. As a non-religious person, I'm saying it's still like moving. It's still gets me. Like,
I think that's sometimes like where, especially sort of my issues with religion come, because I'm also an atheist, and my issues tend to come with just because we are atheists, we don't believe that this is real, that this is a thing, doesn't mean we can't appreciate moments like that, where, like you say, when he regains his faith, when he's asking for forgiveness. It's very emotionally moving as well. I think another
and I
thing...
would just like to say, oh, sorry.
No, carry on.
Oh, I was going to say, on behalf of atheists, people, all my life, because I kind of figured it out when I was about like 8 or 9 that I did not believe in God. But I still kind of had to go to church and shit. But it was people were like, oh, you're a bad person, or you believe in the devil. I'm like, if I don't believe in God, why would I believe in the devil? Like that doesn't make any sense. Because that's also part of religion. But I actually, when you break down the way that I live my life and the way I've broken it down to my kids, who've also chosen to be atheists, I've never pushed that on them. But it's like, I actually, if you look at the teachings of Jesus, who I think is a pretty cool guy, I live like that. I'm kind to my neighbors. I turn the other cheek. I really try to be a good person. So it's not like I'm living specifically by that. It's just good words to live by, to be a good person. Being an atheist doesn't mean you're a bad person. No. And I actually, people who have real faith, who really have it, I'm kind of jealous of them. Like, I really wish I had that in times of need in my life, but I also know that like it's just not for me, and I can't believe in it. So I'm not going to like try to fake myself out on it. But other people, I admire that in them, if they're really faithful and not just doing it like church is a social gathering and then being sacrilegious and holier than thou with their crap.
I think the thing for me is like I have no issue. Sorry, on you go, Nico.
I remember the whole atheist thing when I was younger as well. A lot of folk didn't get it, and they were genuinely like, "Oh shit!"
Bye, Nico.
I've got 2 cats running about with fucking being dicks. Sorry. I remember folk just instantly they assumed if you were an atheist, you were like a devil worshipper.
Yeah,
right.
Like that was what they thought, and I'm like, you really don't understand what it actually is.
Any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, without God, there's no devil. That's how. Yeah, that's in your Bible that you read there, folks.
But a lot of people over here thought that if you said anything but like religious and like they could understand if you were any other religion, but if you say you didn't believe in any religion, that meant, oh, the devil's got hold of you. That's what your problem is. And you're like, fuck off.
I got a lot of pushback from my family. I was this punk, atheist, bisexual kid. I didn't really fit in for a long time, but they kind of treated me like I was a Satanist or something like that. And I'm like, I don't believe in any of that
Yeah.
shit at all. Like, but like you don't understand, and you try to explain it, and they just get like really, really angry. But I do appreciate other people's faith. I think faith is a beautiful thing. If it's for you, if it's not, that's cool. As long as you're not doing harmful things to other people with it, whatever your faith is, it's for you, and that means it's truly your faith. If it's you're living the teachings, it doesn't mean you're trying to push on other people, and you're not supposed to go out and recruit and reform. And everybody who does that means try to and find out I'm atheist, they're like, oh well, no, I'm going to recruit you to my church. I'm like, nah, it's not going to work. I just
Yeah.
don't believe in it. But yeah, like it's just being treated like you have like an eye in the middle of your forehead or something. Like, okay.
I
It's
think,
not like that now, but I remember in the 80s it was, the 90s it was.
yeah.
Oh
'Cause
yeah, it was tough.
listen,
It was tough back
Yeah.
then.
listen, I was lucky. Like when I was a teenager, it was the mid 2000s, and that sort of pushback was nowhere near as prevalent at that point in time. We still had to go to church with school.
I
Like we
think there were
still,
a lot more conversations being had.
yeah, like the school, especially sort of primary school as well. Like we would still have to go to church at like Christmas and Easter, and go and do services like that, and we would still sing hymns at like school assemblies, and we were still like encouraged to go to things like Boys Brigade, which is obviously like a religious organization as well. So like there was still all of that, but there was a lot less sort of it was a lot less in the classroom sort of thing, if that makes sense. And listen,
Oh, it
like,
was everywhere when I was younger.
and yeah, and listen, I have no issues with religion, and religion teaches a lot of good things and a lot of good ways and ways that people should live their life. It's kind of like a broken clock is still twice a day kind of thing for me.
Yes.
But my issue itself isn't with religion. My issue itself is with the church, because the church is the big evil, if you will. Like, it's the church that actually sort of does this, and that's where my issue with religion comes.
And there are some other people who cherry pick whatever text.
Mm-hmm.
And most commonly what I've been met was people cherry picking the Bible. I grew up Catholic, but my other grandmother was Baptist, and now the Catholics are evil and they're going to hell, and Catholics are like, oh, the Baptists are wrong, and I was just kind of like, wait, this is confusing. But
Catholics and Proddies over here, but same thing, yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was just like everybody else is wrong, and it's like, but that it's all the same God, right? I mean, right, right. So I started asking these questions, like, wait, hold on. But I mean, I just think that now one of the great things about social media that I tell my kids is like there's these conversations being had where you can get on TikTok or whatever, see other people who experience the things that you are like. There's a lot more, it's open about atheism. People are open about not having children. People are open about mental illness and different things like that. And so they live in a much more accepting world. And I'm glad.
Yeah, and
I'm
I
glad
think
because it was a tough ride.
The thing is, most religious books were there to control the masses. That's what it was
Yeah.
for. If you research it enough, you can work out what every empire that built it around these books.
And there are so many different revisions of it.
Exactly. Oh,
Don't.
let's have a war because I want to get divorced. That was what happened over here.
well,
You know what I mean?
like
That's Jay. The whole country converted from Catholicism to Protestants because the king wanted to get divorced.
and listen, like sectarianism is rife in specifically in Glasgow, but kind of sort of throughout. I wouldn't say it's too bad up here.
And the thing is, you talk to them about it, they don't really see it as a religious thing. It's just we hate them more than they hate us.
Yeah, and obviously here now it's a sports thing as well.
Yeah.
Like it's very much developed into a sports / religious thing, which
Really?
sports and
Yeah.
religion go hand in hand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here
So
it seems to be political stuff and religion go hand in hand. I don't like that at all.
There is still, I think, an element of that, but I think by and large it's not a huge deal. But in terms of sports, like, so it's for anyone at home who's listening who doesn't know as well, if you're listening to this from Scotland, then you'll absolutely obviously know what we're talking about already. So essentially, two of the biggest football soccer clubs in the world.
I knew what you meant.
In the country are Celtic and Rangers, and they're both from Glasgow. Celtic is a very, very much a Catholic club with their foundations in Ireland, and Rangers are a very Protestant club. And yeah,
with their foundations in England, it's quite hysterical.
So it's
see, for me, it was inescapable that I was going to end up a Catholic because I'm an Irish Italian mutt.
Mm-hmm.
So both of them Catholic, and I didn't just go to the Catholic church. I went to a Roman Catholic church. I went to service in Latin.
Excuse the pun, but oh Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like whenever I go to church with, a Roman Catholic is like the most Catholic you can be.
Yeah.
It's super Catholic. And so like, go in the church and you kneel, and then, you're fucking kneeling on the ground most of it. And then you're up and you got your responses. And, anytime I see somebody wearing rosary beads, I'm like, you're not supposed to wear those, the church doesn't like that. And I'm like, I catch myself like, oh, they got me, man. They got me. But also I used to be a performing singer, and some of my favorite songs to sing are some of those hymns that are like, 1,000 years old. They're so fucking beautiful. So like, I don't have a problem going into a church, but it's just when I go to a non-Catholic church, I kind of don't know what to do. I'm like, we don't have okay.
So in my school, there was a couple of Roman Catholic girls, and they use God's loophole. That's all I'm saying on that subject. And I was broken by that, how they kept on saying they kept their virginity because of God's loophole, and they were devout about this. I mean, it was like a religion for them. I'm like, what the fuck?
I knew. You know what? We've just been having like a really nice highbrow intellectual conversation.
No, but this is what it was like back then. It was so fucking weird. Like religion still controlled your sex life back then. That's how fucking weird it was.
I mean, it still does for some people. It still does for some people.
Well, and the Catholics, I mean, it's extremely prevalent. Yeah. They absolutely, and I can't talk about the Mormons. I don't really know enough, but what I do know, I'm kind of like, I wish I didn't know that. I learned it against my will, but yeah, with the Catholics, they really do like
sacred salamander works for me.
Through the rhythm method and stuff like that. But every Catholic family has like 8 fucking kids.
Yeah, I'm like the rhythm method. Fuck that. Get the tambourine out. Go for it. Like, anyway.
So, anyways, right. So
I wasn't actually trying to convert it. So actually, I'm just meaning that's how
of course you
devout they were. No, but genuinely, that's how devout they were. They were so into it that they thought they had to be pure for their wedding day and all this shit. And you're like, all right, fair enough, but you're shagging more guys than any of the other girls, and you're basically saying you're still a virgin, and I'm like, that's not how that works.
Yeah, I mean, I think that honestly, like, I lost my virginity when I was 15. Sorry about that, guys. I'm going wrong TMI. But the thing is, it was the worst fucking experience of my life. It was about 15 seconds of bad sex. I don't even know if it counted. But then I didn't have sex again for like years. It was terrible. So if I had waited till marriage and that was my sex life, and then I was still in the Catholic church, I would have been like, I'm going to have to convert now because I can't, I'm going to have to divorce this motherfucker. That was terrible. My first time I had sex, and it was the worst sex I ever had.
It's supposed to last more than 15 seconds?
I prefer that, yeah. I prefer it, especially like,
16 seconds. Anyway, so obviously, like, we've just been having like a really big conversation here about, the role of religion and how that can sort of play on people's beliefs and, how that regards to pop culture. So it shows you just how offensive this movie must have actually been to them, because I don't get it, right? I watched this movie, and obviously I love this movie. I get it, but I'll never understand that level of offense that these people must have felt, because I don't have the same beliefs as them.
Well, and the fact that Catholics watched it in droves is wild. I mean, I think that says something. Like, they're curious motherfuckers about this, because like, hey, this Catholic guy did this movie about like a girl possessed. Well, let me go find out how offensive it is. And then they would faint and pass out. And that happened in several situations. Like, probably has the record for that, of people like freaking out in theaters. So it's like, it had a big shock factor.
There was somebody with a heart attack as well.
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
like fucking front page news over here that the guy had a heart attack watching this.
I th-
And I remember when folk were talking about, because it got remastered and re-released. It got an hour cinema release over here. I can't remember which anniversary it was. And I went to see it because
I
I
think it
said,
was the 40th anniversary.
oh no, it was well
Was
before
it?
that.
Was
I think it was when I was
I
like
mean,
teenager.
it generally
Like I
gets,
sneaked in, I was still underage.
they generally get like 20th, 25th, 30th.
Well, remember, I think that for the not quite the 30th, was it the 30th or 25th or something, where they inserted some of the extra footage. Remember, I got the VHS when it came out, so I had to have been when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Oh, let me do the math. 20
How old are
something.
you again?
Oh,
Nico,
be
you should
45.
never ask someone their age.
Or
That's so
because
rude.
you're close to my age. I was trying to work it
Yeah,
out.
I'm just
So
a
yeah,
little bit older than you.
it's probably the same. It's probably the same one I'm talking about.
Yeah, they
It's probably
added the
same
spider walk
anniversary.
one in, and where they added the extra stuff in,
Yeah, because that was in it. Yeah. So
and then some extra
that
footage. Yeah.
one, when that one got released and they re-released it and all the stuff was happening, that was when over here somebody had a heart attack watching it and it was front page news then. And it was
Yeah,
like,
and
what
they
the
had
fuck? You
left
know what I
that
mean?
spider walk part out of the original cut. And then when I saw it in theaters with the re-release, I was like, oh fuck, this is gonna be great. And it was great. But that spider walk scene just comes at like such an unexpected moment. And
Oh,
it's short.
It comes out of nowhere.
It comes out of nowhere. Like, okay, they just find out Burke's dead. Everybody's grieving and it's quiet. It just suddenly she's going down the stairs. Like, I was like, oh, what the fuck is going? Oh my god. Scared the shit out of me.
Because I think at this point as well, because she's gotten to that level of possession there as well, we don't really see her leave the bedroom again at any other point. So you're not expecting her to just suddenly just come rampaging down the stairs on her little backwards crab spider walk, you know?
Spurting blood from her mouth.
Yeah.
So you're obviously talking about, you know, how the reaction of people in theaters, and I find that really, really interesting as well because, you know, movies get that tagline now all the time, don't they? And this is how I get my favorite franchise wrangled into this episode, because if you remember when Terrifier 2 came out, there was just
all the reports of that people were throwing up and
one fucking episode without saying it.
I was so excited because people were throwing up and fainting and like at a specific point.
Yeah.
And I was like waiting for that point to happen. And when it did, I was like, it didn't do it to me because I've seen shit. But like, I think if you're a casual viewer, it would fuck you up.
But like, we hear about
even
this.
Then
we hear about this all the time. Like, it wasn't not just like for grotesque movie. Remember when Paranormal Activity came out as well, and there was so much about that. And then you've like things like the Blair Witch got it, and like there's been
Blair Witch got big.
Yeah, there's been so, and that's just like a few examples. There's so many examples of this happening, and for the most part, it's bullshit. It's complete fabrication. Whereas for this,
they used to call it ballyhoo in the 50s, like William Castle. Like with his movies, it was called ballyhoo. It's a way it's no carnival term to like sort of rope more people into your film.
But for this, it was not just it was genuine. You believe it was genuine as well.
Yes.
So
like even when the re-release came in about, right? There was folk sneaking in because I was underage. There was folk sneaking in to watch it. There was folk fucking basically bussing to other places so they could watch it. There was folk coming from Shetland to Aberdeen to watch it. Like, they were organising boat trips where they were fucking doing that, and they booked out the whole fucking cinema. It was that fucking... It was that big.
It was I remember the big to-do about that re-release. They're like, okay, unreleased footage, and it's going to be back in theaters. I was like, fuck, I can't pass this up. So my mom and I went, and we were... we had a great fucking time. But other people were just like, as you leave, even at that time in the 90s, people were still kind of like nauseous and a little like quiet when they left. It's sort of how when I left Evil Dead 2013, everybody was kind of flipped out, and I had been laughing through the whole movie because I laugh at gore, and they were like, people actually got even moved away from us because Sean and I were fucking losing our minds laughing. We're like, this is great. Like, we were so annoying, and those people were shaking and freaking out, and like we walked out and they were like, oh, and they're like looking at us and pointing, whispering like, those are the people, those are the ones that were laughing. I laugh at gore. I don't know.
Do you think, like, going back to what we were saying before about, you know, younger viewers seeing this and maybe it not having the same impact on them as it maybe had done like 40 years ago, 50 years ago, do we think if it will inevitably get another re-release in the theater at some point, if you took, say, a 13 or a 14, not that they would get in, but like a 14 or a 15-year-old to the theater to see this in, say, 2024, 2025. Do you think because it's in the theater, it might still have that impact for them?
No,
I think
because of
so.
one reason only.
Okay.
There's a movie that ruined this movie, and everybody knows what that is. It fucking, especially the fucking where she pisses and rubs the face in it and all that stuff.
Are you talking
That
about?
has ruined this
Are you
movie.
talking
Scary
about?
Movie
Are you
2?
talking about Scary Movie 2?
Yeah, that has ruined this movie. Because, like,
I
as
don't
soon as
think
you
that
talk
it
about
did.
this, no, but as soon as you talk about this, folk instantly go, "Oh, I've seen this before, but it was funny."
Yeah.
And you're like, well, because a lot more folk will watch the scary movies, the franchise, than watch these ones, which
Well,
is
and also,
disturbing.
I think there's another aspect, like I've seen with my kids. Ash hasn't seen all of the Saw movies, but he watches the kill counts. I'm like, you're just cheating. What you gotta watch the movies. So like there's some movies I've shown him where he's like, oh, I watched the kill count or I watched a ranking of it. I'm like, and you hadn't seen the movie? No wonder it's not a big deal to you because you have to build up to it. You have to get there. So I think sometimes, that is the downside of Gen Z and Gen Alpha having like TikTok and all that is because they kind of go on YouTube or TikTok and they'll see the like sort of with memes. They call it the memes. To me, I'm old and memes are still like pictures that are funny, but they're like videos now, are memes. And so they're like, oh, I saw a meme of this, and I'm like when I was watching Pink Flamingos most recently with my kids, my daughter started saying the part like kill everyone now. I'm like, how you have never seen this movie? She's like, oh, it's a meme on TikTok. I'm like, what the fuck? No. So I think that you would have to factor in that shit that they're chronically online and they probably heard and seen a lot already about it. And that's unfortunate. There's so many good
because
things
it's the
about
short
social media,
attention
but this is the
span,
bad.
Jenny.
It has completely destroyed attention spans. It completely has done that.
Yeah,
I also think, but you got to
it's
factor
the
in
short
parents.
attention span.
My kids have really great parents. I think, I'm just saying. But they can do a slow burn because they were raised on slow burn movies. They like slow burns. They like long movies. They like mood stuff. So for the most part, they have my taste and they have been educated in the fine art of the horror film. So for overall, like they usually are cool with it. It's just the Exorcist one is the one that threw me with ass. I've been like, disappointment.
There's a phrase that springs to mind with everything you just said. There's nothing like stroking your own cock, is there? Like you child like greatest parent ever, educated, done. Oh, fucking hell.
Well, I'm gonna say being a mom is a thankless job, but my kids are really fucking cool. And so I'm just saying that I really
I'm
think I
pretty
had
sure
a
you
lot to
thank
do with
yourself.
that.
It's fine.
I would
And
say,
nobody ever thanks their mom enough. Okay, let me
I
say.
would say, Nico, that I think someone else stroking your cock is always better.
Yeah, it is. It
Oh,
is
hell
much
yeah.
better
But
when
you know what
somebody
I
else
mean
is
by
doing
it.
it for you. But
Oh,
when
hell yeah.
when nobody else is, sometimes you just got to do it yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Jesus.
Got a free hand, right?
Christ. Wow. And once again, Nico just lowering the tone there. Thank you very much. It's what you're here for. Anyways,
Thank you.
Right. We should probably get onto a couple of other like sort of topics about the movie.
Absolutely.
I want to know if you guys have any negatives about this movie. If there's anything about this movie that you maybe didn't think worked quite as well, is there anything you didn't like about it? Because this is generally one of the most, even if people have this sort of religious hate for it, there's this sort of universal acceptance in the horror community that this is just the greatest thing of all time. So is there anything...
It is just the ending for me.
Just the ending for you?
Yeah. Like, it is brilliant all the way through. It's a 2-hour film, but you don't feel like it's 2 hours.
No, absolutely.
No.
And it passes so quickly, but I think that ending, because it's so quick for me, it feels like it was rushed, even though I know it wasn't.
Listen,
you know what I mean?
I agree with you, the ending is really quick, right? But I think the build up to that is so intense, and it is a long build up to that, because it's not just that 9-minute scene that we were talking about, that whole sort of exorcism scene. There's lots of other build up to that. There's lots of, Reagan going wild, and you've got Father Karras's stuff in there. But you've also got...
I thought it was greatly paced.
Yeah, I think so. I think
here's a little bit, and then here's this, and then here's a little bit, and then here's this.
And
but every time you got that little bit, it was very shocking. It was very abrupt, and it felt right.
And I think one thing this movie does really, really well. I know I asked for negatives, and now we're just back to being like, this movie's great. But
my negative is behind the scene. So.
Okay. One thing I think this movie does really, really well is
That poor kid, yeah.
yeah, we'll definitely get onto all of that. Is they make you they manage to make you care about these characters with very, very little information. You know, we get little snippets into their life. Like there's
Yeah.
before the possession, for example, when you know Reagan is still just Reagan. There's like a really nice scene where she's sort of like dancing with Chris in like the kitchen, and they do the Ouija board together. And even though it's horror movies, you don't do fucking Ouija boards, but you know that they just seem to like they seem to have like a really good loving relationship. And it seems
Very
to be
The bit where they talk about the horse, exactly, it's brilliant.
yeah, you know, and then Father Karras as well, because I think it would be really easy for them to have just made Father Karras this really sort of, you know, disillusioned, kind of unlikable character, but we get those scenes with his mother, and they're not long scenes we get with his mother, but you know when she's still at home, for example, and you know you can really see the sort of love and care that he has for her, and then you know the scene in the hospital, and then just after when we find out that his mother has died, and we see how that's affected. They really sort of drive it home, and you care about these characters so much.
Even Father Dyer, who is not like a huge character in it, he becomes a bigger character in 3. But he's very, I mean, you still care about him. You see him having fun at Chris's party, playing the piano. Like I think in heaven, you know, they want me doing a show every night because he's great at the piano or whatever. And you know, like the thing about priests is they can smoke and drink and gamble. You know, like the Catholics, they're different.
Yeah.
They all smoke and drink and gamble. I do all that, but the drinking. But the thing is that even that, and I love Lee J. Cobb as Kinderman. Kinderman is a very unique character. And I will say, as much as I love Exorcist 3, and I hope we talk about it at some point, because I don't even acknowledge 2 at all. I just go 1, 3, done. But
we have to do 2 if we're doing 3.
Oh no.
I'll nominate it. I'll
No.
nominate it. I will nominate it.
I'll get you back for it too. Just keep in mind. I got a long.
We're not playing tit for tat.
Yeah, we are. That's
we are.
We are now.
We're actually going to do that.
This is why.
I've got a point.
This is why I just pick good and you know movies that is very, very well liked. So
I'm just kind of a wild card.
On the tit for tat one, by the way, I never brought up Season of the Witch last time. I just commented on it.
That's bringing it up. I just commented on it. That's the same thing.
I just somebody else brought it up. I didn't bring it up. I just referenced it after.
I think I brought it up, to be fair.
Exactly. So it wasn't tit for tat that I was doing, by the way.
Okay. Whatever you say, Nico.
I'm just saying, maybe watch a bad movie. I'm really gonna pick one that's gonna be tough for you. So, but anyway, so we have George C. Scott, who's a great actor.
The camera? Do you see the camera, Candy? Come on, just.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Right. I may be the youngest member on this podcast, but that is enough, children. Like, stop fighting. Okay, Dad. Go back to your corners.
Oh, don't say daddy to me. You'll get turned on.
No, not daddy.
No,
Dad.
No,
that was very
that was
daddy is for special people like my old men like Tom Atkins and Donald Sutherland. Those are my daddies.
Well, I'm pretty sure he'd like the daddy part.
They're like granddaddies. Anyway, so George C. Scott, also a consummate actor, he ends up playing Kinderman because Lee J. Cobb had passed away by the time William Peter Blatty, he directed Exorcist 3 because he did not like 2.
Yeah.
And Exorcist 3 is a great fucking film. But yeah, so we have George C. Scott in that role, and I think George C. Scott plays every role fucking angry. And Lee J. Cobb in The Exorcist, he does Kinderman in all his weird eccentricities and his funny things about the movie comments. Like he grows on you. Kinderman grows on you because he kind of plays dumb a little bit and goofy, but you know he's sharp as a tack.
Yeah.
You know, finding these little things and knowing, and you know that he knows without any recognition, without him saying it out loud. Like he found in one of her sculptures. And it's like, oh, your daughter makes these, huh? That's neat. Oh, will you sign this for me? Blah, blah. You know, like I'm a big movie fan. And his friendship with Father Karras that turns into a friendship with Father Dyer. Like, yeah, he grows on you. Like every single character grows on you. Mm-hmm. You know, Sharon, her assistant, she grows on you. Like she's sweet. And Burke is an asshole, but do you know what she's done? Your cunting daughter. You know?
But Burke did also, you know, call someone a Nazi and was doing it, you know.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm Swiss. Yeah, Burke was an asshole, but it was like, okay, he grew on you just because like you understood that he was an asshole.
Yeah.
You understood these things, and so it was like
every
Chris-
group's got one. Don't worry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nico, it's you.
And-
It's you, Nico.
Why does everyone always say that? It's not nice.
A lot of people say that to you.
Well, one character we haven't really talked about that much as well is Father Merrin, who obviously, you know, comes in super late in the movie, you know, played by the incredible and late Max von Sydow, you know, and
He was actually my age when they
he
filmed
was
it.
44 when this was
They
filmed.
had to do makeup on him. It was like 3 hours of
Oh.
makeup every time.
Yeah, it's great makeup. But he comes in, you know,
Because he looks old.
he does,
Yeah.
yeah. And you know, he comes into this movie, and when we see him when he gets out, and you get that really iconic image of him stepping out of the taxi, and he's in front of the house, and like it's possibly again
Beautiful shot.
one of the most iconic shots in horror, again.
Absolutely.
And he comes into the house, and he's frail. You can see that he's frail and that he's old, even though, you know, Max von
He's
Sydow
got this
wasn't
heart
old.
condition.
Yeah.
Well, see, you say about that shot outside where you just see him outside with the light on.
Mm-hmm.
To do the re-release that I was talking about that I went to see, the very first one for it was just that, and it was zooming out and Tubular Bells started playing,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, no fucking way is that coming to the cinema.
Yeah.
It was just the perfect way of getting it, you know what I mean? There was nothing else on it. It was literally just that shot zooming out. Music. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
So iconic.
Yeah, but like so we get this introduction to Merrin, and he seems really frail, but then he gives such a powerful performance, and that like Max von Sydow, this is a power, like he comes in and chews the shit out of this scenery as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the dude was in Ingmar Bergman films. Like that's like fucking royalty,
Mhm.
basically. Like he's like a god.
And so I just think like what
Andy was Ming the Merciless, his best role ever.
but I get this is like when you go through this sort of cast, and you know, Chris McNeil as well, she gives a fantastic performance.
Ellen Burstyn always delivers.
You know, that when you go through it, like the cast just absolutely, they delivered 100%. There's not a weak performance in there. They all just absolutely nailed it. And again, that goes back to, and that again goes back to, you know, really caring about these characters and really getting this sort of character development that we're getting. And the movie is just, it's such amazing storytelling.
It really is. But you know, my negatives were the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, go for it.
Like I said, William Friedkin, I think he's like a Stanley Kubrick type. I mean, makes great films, but like he really went overboard. Like Jason Miller's the consummate, like, you know, actor. He's a Tony Award winning playwright and actor. He did a lot of stage work. I mean, and he had two famous sons, one being Jason Patrick, for your Lost Boys people. And his other son is Joshua John Miller, who was in Near Dark. He was Homer. He was the little kid.
Oh, the better one.
Yeah. So he wrote The Final Girls, which is a great fucking flick. But like Jason Miller was their dad, and he was like, when he was delivering his lines, like William Friedkin came up behind him and shot a gun off. He's like, and he got really fucking pissed. Jason Miller's like, I'm a fucking actor. Like, you don't have to do that. And so like when Father Dyer, who was a real priest that they hired to do that role, was going to do the blessing and do the last rites for Father Karras at the end of the movie, William Friedkin came up to him and just slapped the shit out of him. That's why he's shaking. But it works really well. But like, you don't have to do that. Not to mention the back injuries to Ellen Burstyn, the back injuries to Linda Blair. Those are permanent. Yeah. You know, like just and like she was saying that the harness was hurting her. Keep doing it. Yeah. Ellen Burstyn's like, you're pulling me too hard. Pull her harder this time. And then, you know, she had, you know, fucked up vertebrae in her back. Same with Linda Blair, and then it gets considered a cursed film. I thought we should just also address that. Yeah. And I think that, you know, a lot of people, we get this fascination with cursed films. On Shudder, they have a series of cursed films, and of course, their first episode of the series was The Exorcist. But the weird thing in that episode is they talked about like there was a real life murderer as one of the doctors and some shit, but they really didn't talk about all the other stuff that you get on the extras of like the re-release that 25th anniversary or whatever that we were talking about. Nico and I were earlier, that when you had like the videotape of that, which I had at the time, and then later on the DVD, they had like a whole bunch of interviews, talk more about that.
I had it on the DVD as well, yeah.
And then Linda Blair in person is not very pleasant. and she does not like to talk about The Exorcist. And in that Cursed Films episode, she would not really talk about it. So it's like, why did we do this now? Because you didn't really talk about it. Like all the shit that people already know, like you just skipped it, and then you're talking to different people who do exorcisms. I'm like, we're supposed to be talking about the Exorcist film. So, but like there's a lot of weird coincidences. And then the actor that played Burke died before the film came out.
Yeah, it was
So
it was not just a couple of weeks after filming wrapped.
yes,
It was,
and so
it
it has some odd shit to it.
Yeah, I think
The
you
whole
know,
The
set
real
burned
life
down besides
murderer
Reagan's.
thing.
Yeah, the whole
But
set burned down besides Reagan's bedroom.
yeah, but the real murderer thing is fucking freaky as well. That whole thing when
Yeah.
they go into that is mental. But I think it's really cruel the way that they put her in the brace and they did it off camera really slow so it didn't hurt and nothing like that. As soon as the camera was a roll, they turned it up to 11 and just fucked her back up. And that is just
And that's a little
fucking
girl.
brutal.
It's a child.
Yeah,
you
I know. Like
It's
you'd never get away with that nowadays.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The
I think-
lawsuit would be stupidly
And
high.
you don't get to, and Linda Blair doesn't talk about any of this stuff ever.
They wonder.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. You
Fucking traumatized, you know?
But you
That,
know,
but I mean, it's like, but she does horror cons all the time. I see her, she comes to Horror Hound sometimes, and she only wants to talk about her animal activism. I'm like, that's cool and all,
But you're at
people
horror
want to talk to you about The Exorcist, and you're not.
You're at horror convention, and you
She
were
was
in-
really rude to her fans, so I was very put off by her. But you know, I don't know. I'm sure she had trauma from filming this, but you know, you gotta
Still
deal with
pays
it
the money,
anyway.
does it?
Well, that's it. Like at the end of the day, you're at HorrorCon, and you're literally in probably the biggest horror movie of all time. Your fans are gonna want to talk to you about it. So yes, she had like a really really shitty time. William Friedkin, much like Stanley Kubrick, is a piece of shit for that. Stanley Kubrick was actually offered this movie as well.
Dear God,
Fuck, could you imagine if he did it?
it would have been terrible. He is so up his own ass. Like I was talking about Argento last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate Stanley Kubrick and I hate his movies.
And and again, talking about cursed films, I think we talked about that sort of thing, Nico, when we did The Omen, because The Omen's definitely the other one.
Also considered a cursed film, yes.
That's fucked up. The Omen one, the
The
curse.
one that I have talked about, and I think that we should broach at some point. I'm a huge Twilight Zone fan, but Twilight Zone the movie, that is absolutely cursed film.
Yeah. Okay.
And Rosemary's Baby, I iconically, like I said, that walks so this movie could run.
Yeah. Right. Couple more things then for me, and for move on. But this is the portion where you can now go for the jugular, Candy, because I want to talk about David Gordon Green's recent Exorcist movie.
I've not seen it yet.
Candy, do you want to share your thoughts?
Well, the best thing about that movie is that David Gordon Green got fired. It was supposed to be a trilogy because everything is a trilogy now, and which we don't need to do that all the time. It's fine.
But trilogies
whatever.
make bank. That's why they do it.
But we usually
this
have
one.
like a sophomore slump, or
Yeah.
or it just doesn't. And David Gordon Green, like he did Halloween 2018, and that was all right, and Halloween Kills, which was not good, and then Halloween Ends, which made me want to end my life.
I
So, but
respectfully
anyway,
disagree.
This is gonna be fun. Where's the popcorn?
Carry on.
Right.
God. What
No,
the
you two
fuck?
keep going. I'm going to get popcorn.
Anyway, yeah, no.
I got caught down. All right, but yeah, so what they tried to do was sort of recapture. So we get spoiler alert, we get a cameo from Reagan, Linda Blair.
Yeah.
We get Ellen Burstyn in there, and I just think, and I talked about this with Late Night with the Devil, which I really did like. I think
Love that.
every single possession film is always going to be compared to The Exorcist. That is the gold standard.
Yeah.
Every single fucking possession film will be compared. And so it's like Late Night with the Devil did it smart by doing the nod and like going ahead and acknowledging like, yeah, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And then doing their own thing. Okay, so you got to pay your homage or whatever and then go on. But if you don't pay your homage, and this one just tried so hard, it really did. And it just wasn't as good. And I think one, it could be I don't like the director. I don't like his work. But I try not to bring that prejudice to it. But also, it's just like it was much of a rehash, like, hey, remember this and how great it was back in 1973. It's like, but yeah, we've seen it done better. This is not good. And then you've got the two girl. I don't know. It just didn't work and it flopped. And I'm glad. And I'm glad David Gordon Green got fired. I do think it could use an injection of fresh blood. And I trust Mike Flanagan with absolutely everything. So I think that he'll do it justice. And I think it's in the right hands now. And I'm happy to see that we talked about giving reboots and remakes a chance. And I'm happy for that. When I heard David Gordon Green was doing this, I was already, and I saw the trailer for the Exorcist Believer or whatever. I was like, oh God, here we go. It's gonna fucking suck. Sometimes you can tell from the trailer, like, this is gonna blow. This is gonna be bad. And it just, I did not like the way it was shot or handled. It just, and even throwing those cool cameos of Ellen Burstyn and Linda Blair in there, it still doesn't work.
Yeah,
It's ass.
I think, like, you know, I'm not Mike Flanagan's biggest fan. Nico, you'll know this from way back on
Really?
way back in our
I just keep hoping one day you're gonna wake up and go, yeah, I like Mike Flanagan.
There's a lot of his stuff I do like. Doctor Sleep is not one of them.
I knew you were gonna say it. I knew it. I'm like, I'm avoiding it. I'm
But-
avoiding it. But
To argue in his point, to argue in his defense, I think that he's the best person that's ever done Stephen King adaptations for the most part, except for Toby Hooper with, Salem's Lot,
Yeah.
his TV movie, which was fantastic. I really think that he handles the material the best.
Yeah, listen,
Stephen King.
and you know,
I think he did Doctor Sleep brilliantly because
I
he had
love Dr.
merged
Sleep.
two
I'm
things.
Big fan.
He-
And Rebecca Ferguson, call me.
He had to
I mean-
merge two different ways of actually doing it. He merged the book and the movie, and I think
And he
for
had to
somebody
do that.
having
Yes.
exactly for somebody having to do that and making a movie so good that way, it was just that's why I trust him with a lot of fucking material. Like,
I'm ready for his Dark Tower series. That's my fucking favorite.
yes, oh yes,
Like, I got a hard on for
Right.
that shit. Like, oh, give it to me.
Nico,
yeah,
I'm
fucking
ready.
too right.
Nico, I don't think I've ever heard you make a noise like that on this podcast.
Like, fucking that is the one I'm waiting for the most, to be honest.
Yeah,
'cause
I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
because I think if anybody's got to do that fucking right, it is
He's the
him.
only one I trust, to be fair.
Yeah.
So I
And
just
see
want to
if-
make a point that he does make the best Stephen King adaptations.
See if he
may not
fucks
love
that up.
Dr. Sleep.
See if he fucks that up, the world is going to end. That's the way I look at it, right? Fucking honestly, that's the first sign of the apocalypse. Okay.
Right.
Yep.
I'm gonna open up the floor for you guys now to finish off any further points that you may have about the movie. Nico, you got anything? Do you want to go first?
No, we've covered basically everything I was wanting to cover about it.
Awesome. Candy, anything?
I like having a third person here. They always fucking cover half the shit I want to do. So it's brilliant.
I bring the
Fucking
chaos.
handy.
I'm a chaotic good. Oh my God. Chaotic good. For me, like, there's just so much to say, but it's all been said. So I'm trying to find like a fresh approach. But I mean, really, with The Exorcist, it's earned its spot as, for the longest time it was considered and still pretty much considered the scariest film of all time. And I still think that holds up. I don't know if that's indicative of my age or when I saw it or my religious background or what, but it tends to be mutually agreed by most people that it is the scariest horror movie of all time. I hadn't been scared by a movie. Hereditary was the first movie to scare me in probably 2 decades. And that felt good. And then I remembered, The Exorcist scared the shit out of me. That was great. As horror fans, that's what we want, and I just rewatched The Exorcist and it fucking holds up for me. It's still really, really good. And I love the pacing of it. It's really done well. And I always kind of think back to like certain things in the book where you can go on a little bit more. And I think reading the book can add to it if you are a reader. But overall, the movie really holds up. And it's, despite its age, it really doesn't, like Rosemary's Baby, it's kind of timeless. Despite, showing certain, like, obviously it's the 70s, but, it still works. It's still about a little girl, an innocent, being a pawn in this game between Marin and the demon.
Yeah.
And, because it was the first time that Marin's fucked with this demon, but you find that out more through reading and then also later. So that's why I kind of knew that when Marin walks through the house, like screaming like Marin. And Mercedes McCambridge, who did the voice of the demon, amazing. She was an actress back in like the 40s and 50s, kind of like a side bit, but like the crazy shit that she did for this movie. Like she was sober and she had been an alcoholic, and they tied her to a chair so it would sound like she was really struggling, like tied her down. And then she had a priest there to help her because she broke her sobriety and was drinking whiskey and smoking, like chain smoking and eating raw eggs to make her voice do all that weird shit. And there's no alterations to the voice. That's exactly the sounds that she made. And so she didn't even want to be credited. But then, like, when she saw the movie, she's like, yeah, I want to be credited. And that was kind of a big to do. But Mercedes McCambridge, like, look up her shit. She's amazing.
Yeah,
There's so many people that were
because they had
really
tried
great.
they tried to alter Linda Blair's voice, and they just couldn't quite get it right. And then
And I think that would have aged it, and I
Yeah.
don't think it would have sounded as good.
Yeah.
So for all the suffering that Mercedes McCambridge went through, it made for a great product. And I'm sorry that she suffered, but like she made that fucking amazing and scary. That voice, like like it's like there's scenes that still shock me a little bit. Like when they walk into Reagan's room and let Jesus fuck you, and she's fucking herself with a crucifix. Then she takes her mom's
Yeah.
face and puts her face in her.
Crotch, yeah.
Yeah,
Fucking,
and then
what
her
was it?
face is all bloody from
And-
her
Bloody,
daughter's
and-
vagina.
And
Like,
here,
oh
here,
God.
here was me thinking we could get through the whole episode without talking about someone stabbing themselves in the vagina with a crucifix, but
It's
It wasn't me that brought it up, so fuck you, Ian.
Such
I mean,
is the movie.
I mean, I guess for me, like I was a little bit younger than Reagan is in the movie when I watched this, and I couldn't imagine taking a metal crucifix, I mean, any crucifix, and jamming it in there like that to the point where you're bleeding. Like
Yeah.
to me, I was just like, it's like sometimes a lot of times when men are watching something and a guy gets kicked in the balls, they like cringe. For me, I was like, oh God, and I felt that pain. And then to take her mom's face and shove it in there, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and then you also have like
I-
you also have like that level of obscenity that again in 1973 that they've got this young child saying, that's hugely shocking at that time as well. We haven't even
and I kind of laugh at some of this, like stick your cock up her ass, you motherfucker, or your mother sucks cocks in hell. And I like when they're doing the exorcism rites and he's like, fuck him in the ass. I'm like,
Yeah.
But it's not that as well. Like we haven't even
but it's still kind of
really
shocking.
talked about that either. Like the great lines in this movie. When they walk in and Reagan's there and just like, what an excellent day for a exorcism.
Right.
Don't give me a role in this movie. I'll fuck the lines up. Terrible, but it's just full of.
I fucked up the line and the fly last week, so it's okay.
Right. Anything else from anyone then before we move on to our next segment? No? Okay, perfect. Yeah. Right, let's talk about some trivia. We'll start off with the finances, as we always do. So, according to IMDb, this movie had a budget of $11 million. Huge amount of money in 1973, and especially for a horror film. Grossed worldwide at the box office $441 million. Obviously, it'll have gone on to make far more, much more money than that. But what a huge...
And that's $1973, right?
Yeah,
no.
so adjusted for inflation, it is still Warner Brothers' highest grossing and most profitable movie to date, I believe. So...
That's fucking impressive.
Just goes to show you. Unless something's come out in the last couple of years to knock that off its perch, I believe that's still true to 2024. But if not, then even until like really recently, it will have been it'll have qualified as that. So yeah, huge financial success, and it's one of those ones where it's a financial success down to how like it's a notoriety thing, isn't it? Like word of mouth spreading about how this movie, like you have to see this film, you have to go and see how offensive it is, So they really capitalized on that. We've already touched on a few of the trivia pieces I had that I'll quickly just rerun through. So Jason Miller, as you said, Candy had a no, great. I love it. It shows we all know our stuff. Jason Miller had a major verbal confrontation with William Friedkin because he fired a gun near to his ear to get an authentic reaction from him. Miller then told Friedkin that he was an actor and he didn't need a gun to act surprised or startled. Both Linda Blair and Ellen Bernstein received permanent spinal injuries during this film as well, which we've already discussed. In the scene where Reagan projectile vomits on Father Karras, which we again didn't really get a chance to talk about there. It was pea soup. That's pretty common knowledge. But the vomit was intended to hit Jason Miller in the chest. But the tubing misfired. Apparently, the tubing misfired and it hit him in the face. So that sort of reaction that he gives is again a genuine one. And Miller did admit later that he was pretty pissed off about it. He seemed like he didn't have a good time, Jason Miller, on the set of this.
No, he was Jason Miller had an interesting life, but he drank himself to death. And that's also, if I can mention the Exorcist 3 one more time, when he's in it, spoiler, I guess. That's why Brad Dourif got all of his lines, because he had there's a term for it now, but he had wet brain.
Yeah.
Where he was such an alcoholic. My biological father has this now. You drink so much that you kind of your brain stops working. It's a form of dementia.
Yeah.
And so he just was kind of an unhappy, brooding type, like very intense how he seems in the film, but very, very good at what he did. And unfortunately, it killed him.
Yeah. Due to death threats that were made against Linda Blair, bearing in mind, Linda Blair was a young child at this point, from religious zealots who believed the film glorified Satan. Warner Brothers had to have bodyguards protecting her for 6 months after the film's release. If you're...
And even then, they still had more bodyguards.
Yeah, if you're giving death threats to a young child just because, she's appeared in a film, a horror film, like, come on.
A fiction piece.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, religion was so strong back then that folk believed either A, it was real, or B, they were fucking an offense to God for putting this on celluloid. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Nico, I think you kind of touched on this earlier. When originally released in the UK, a number of town councils imposed a complete ban on the showing of the film, and this led to the bizarre spectacle of Exorcist bus trips, where enterprising travel companies organises buses to take groups to the nearest town where the film was showing. That just wouldn't happen ever again. That'll never happen again. Yeah. We'll never see that happen again.
That's a very specific thing. Yeah.
Boats from Shetland come in Aberdeen.
Yeah.
From Orkney come in Aberdeen. That's how fucked up it was.
Couple more for me. This was the first horror film nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture. I think both Jason Miller and Linda Blair also got nominations. I think there was a bit of controversy about Linda Blair's nomination because it was down to the voice acting.
Of the Mercedes McCambridge thing.
Yeah, so that probably ruined her chance. And then Max von Sydow has claimed that after this film, he found it really difficult to get work because everyone he was really old. Even though he was 44, there was that convincing.
That's what I was saying. I was shocked. I'm like, he was my age, and I don't think that I'm old. So I'm like, what?
So
I had no idea.
Listen, there is tons and tons and tons of trivia out there about this movie. But as we were saying before we came on air, most of this trivia you will have heard on other podcasts. So I really gave a few snippets there. I really don't want to go over too much old ground or stuff that people already know. But if you guys have anything else trivia wise that you would like to talk about briefly or not, then we can move on.
Oh, there's one thing, and it's effects wise. It's not actually about the pea soup or anything, but because there's no digital, now when they would shoot a scene that would be cold, they would just digitally put the puffs of air like they're breathing in, but they actually had to refrigerate that room and it was freezing, so the breath would show up.
Yeah.
And so can you imagine that's how film has progressed, and just showing that on a movie, it doesn't even look fake now. But I mean, back then they just didn't have the technology, so they were literally freezing in that room.
I think it definitely adds something as well, though, because there is there is a scene, I think it's when they're done with the first go round of the exorcism, and Jason Miller, he's just there, and you can physically see that he is freezing cold. It's not, and you can tell that that's real. That's not acting. He is genuinely that cold. So yeah. But if that's it then, we shall move on to our final segment of the show, and we'll do the ratings and the reviews. As always, we will start off with the critic scores. IMDb has this at an 8.1 out of 10. Metacritic have it at an 8.3, so those are both pretty high scores. for those two sites. I think anything, if you get anything out with a 6.5 to a 7.5 for IMDb, then you're either really good or really shit, because pretty much everything goes into that sort of bracket. Rotten Tomatoes. Candy, we'll let you go first this time. What do you think the Rotten Tomatoes critics scored this movie? Are you there, Candy? Did we lose you?
Yeah, sorry,
Sorry.
my internet froze. I don't know why.
That's okay.
I'm good now.
What do you think the Rotten Tomatoes critics scored this?
92.
So go for 92%. Nico?
See, I remember that podcast when I was listening to it before. It was either late 70s, early 80s. 79.
Nico taking a little bit of an advantage there with some prior knowledge, and see. Yeah, disgustingly, the Rotten Tomatoes critics have this at 78%.
What the fuck, man?
So
I'm
close.
for the moon on
So
that.
close.
Um,
So close.
The critic consensus is The Exorcist rides its supernatural theme to magical effect with remarkable special effects and an eerie atmosphere, resulting in one of the scariest films of all time. So it's a really positive consensus. Could this potentially be down to, once again, younger and more modern reviewers on that site potentially dropping that score down a little bit, because it might not have the same effect as it may have done, a while ago.
Yeah.
Nico, we'll let you go first to this one then. What do you think the Rotten Tomatoes audience scored this?
It's
okay, Nico.
2.
It's okay, Nico. We've got all night.
No, just me. I always try to either remember it or work it out. So I'm trying to work it out. I remember it was a couple of points above. So I was gonna go 83, 82-ish. So 82.
Okay.
Because 2's my lucky number.
Okay. Candy?
I'll just say 85.
Okay. Candy's closest on this one. It was 87% for the audience. So a higher score, but I have to say both those scores are not as high as I thought they were going to be. We talked about...
Yeah, I really shot for the moon on that, like, considering, like, the legacy of this film. I'm like, what?
we talked about it
See,
last...
I thought it'd be about that, because basically younger viewers, when they see this, they're just like, what's the big point?
Well, but we talked about this last week, though, as well, didn't we? Like, this is probably one of the last... there may be one or two others out there, but this is probably one of the last movies that we're going to do, I think, that will realistically and genuinely have a shot now of, sort of taking top spot off our leaderboard.
Yeah.
Not saying that's never going to happen. It may very well happen at some point, but this is sort of like one of those like legitimate ones where you're like, yeah, that could be top, and that's going to take it.
It's definitely a threat.
Yeah, so it was really interesting. I was really surprised.
It should be at least top 5.
Okay, well, we'll find out soon enough. We'll go through some of the listener opinions. Candy, I know you've got a few of these as well, unless, I steal them from you in the next 2 minutes. As always, on our social medias and on Candy's social media as well, we throw out and ask for your scores and opinions on the movies that we cover, and, some of the best ones we're going to read out. I'm going to read out the long one first, and if it's the long one, then we all know who it's from. So Ren has Ren has written into the show. He says, "Here's another long-winded response, full of bad grammar, in the hopes that Ian will faint trying to read it. Thank you very much, Ren. I appreciate it." So Ren says, "This is the scariest film of all time, and I will not even acknowledge arguments against this concrete fact. Even as a non-believer in Christianity, this is the ultimate battle of good versus evil. The robbery of innocence of the 12-year-old Reagan, her desperate mother searching for answers and having to convince the experts that something is wrong with her child beyond scientific explanation, all while her daughter is losing the battle with Pazuzu the entire time, certainly builds the tension like a pressure cooker until the dramatic final battle for her soul. The score, the pacing, the cinematography, and the legendary performance by Linda Blair as the possessed Reagan continue to make this film an uncomfortable in-your-skin watch. It's a movie that I can't find a flaw in, and it continues to scare the bejeebus out of audiences 50 years later. Pod of the Damned knows that I rarely, if ever, give a perfect 10 out of 10, but I have alluded to the fact that there are a few, and this is 100% one of the elite few. 10 out of 10, without a doubt, and objectively one of the greatest horror films and most influential horror films of all time.
Oh, Ren, you make me so proud.
So that is a glowing recommendation there from Ren.
That is so rare from Ren.
Yeah.
You know, an absolutely glowing recommendation there from Ren. But yes, I will very quickly run through a few others. So Emil Johnson on Twitter says 10 because the film started the evil possession trend and film inspired me to practice practical effects during film school. So there you go, inspiring people to, not hate, Satanists. Monster Mash Ken also gives it a 10. Essential horror, set the bar for horror films in the genre. Mount Rushmore of horror, great story. If I could go back in time and watch this the first time in a theater, that would be living, they said. So I think it would be something interesting to watch this for the first time in a theater as well. Like, it's one of those ones for me that, just was never going to be a possibility to watch for the first time in the theater, and I would have loved to have watched this in a theater for the first time. General
I
Witch...
had my weird at-home experience with it, but seeing it in a theater for the re-release was really cool.
Yeah, same.
General Witchfinders also gives it a 10, especially if you look at what other horror films were coming out then and the few years before. It changed horror and cinema forever. Friend of the show, Sarah Marie's 10 out of 10. It's a classic for a reason. The transformation of Reagan is chilling. Our friend Newman over at Movies for Days, 10 out of 10. A beautifully acted and tenderly written family drama filled with well-realized Catholic guilt, class divides, dark humor, stunning makeup, and courageous stunt work. Also, there's a fucking demon. A pristine entry in the horror genre. Just a couple more from me. Francis Lalonde on Facebook. Solid 7. A solid 7. Want to go with 8, but I still remember all the hoopla hype during its release, and that still tends to cause me to go with the lower rating. Interesting. And finally, Official Tribal Witch gives it a 10. To this day, I can't get anyone to rewatch it with me. As a kid, my uncles locked me in the room and forced me to watch it. Now I look back and laugh.
What the fuck?
Now I look back and laugh. Great memories with this one.
Was there not a stop button? Fucking hell, you know what I mean? I'd just been, you lock me in here, watch this. Beep. Fuck you.
I thought my mom was pulling some shit, but I guess
maybe it was back when the remote control was still attached to the TV and they'd snipped it off or something. I don't know. But yes,
Even so then, you just switch off the TV, everything to power buttons.
Those are the reviews that I've got. Candy, I hope I haven't stolen all of your ones.
No, mine are a lot of numbers just because I post it to my stories on Instagram. So some of them are just numbers. I do have one that is from Dissect That Film. Mm-hmm. They gave it a 10, one of the greatest horror films of all time. Amazing effects and performances, still gives me chills to this day. From at Haddonfield, Mike Myers, 2022, they gave it a 10. Okay, we already did. At Doom Generation Pod, they gave it a 9. At Jack Gonzo 4, gave it a 10.
Oh, I thought you said they gave it a 4.
I was ready to say, what the fuck?
Oh no, the 4 is at the end of their handle. No, they give it a 10.
Okay.
And then my final one is from at Andy Be Damned, and they gave it a 10.
I'm noticing a bit of a theme here when it comes to these scores.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. So combining all of those scores, all the scores that Candy's just given, all the ones that I've just given, and everyone else who's replied to our social media, our audience have given this an average score of 9.6 out of 10. It is the second highest rated movie from our listeners. The only movie our listeners have rated higher than this is Aliens. Which,
game over, man.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And it also has the same score as Jaws. Jaws also got a 9.6 from the audience. So that's a pretty good company when it comes to, horror movies. But thank you to everyone for sending those in to us. That just leaves us and Nico. Nico, you know what? Since I stole this from you, I'm gonna do something I've never done, and I'm gonna let you go last. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So I'll go first this
Okay.
time because I've literally never gone first in the entire existence of this podcast.
Yeah, I was gonna be like, I
Okay.
want
Oh,
you to
wow.
go first. So it'd be
So
so
I'll
cool.
go first this time. I'll kick us off. I'm gonna give this, and the only reason I'm giving this, and is purely down to the fact that I have another horror film or two or a couple of other horror films that I prefer over this that are considered my favorites. But this is nigh on a perfect horror movie, so I'm gonna give this 9.5 out of 10. Like it is perfect. Like there's not much I can
Shot
say.
there.
It's pretty much perfect. That like just because I
Yes.
have preferences for a few other horror movies over this one is the only way. And I genuinely don't give out tens. But everything is perfect in this. It's the tension's great, the pacing's great, the effects. We didn't really get to talk about the effects a huge deal, but the effects in this movie are incredible. The acting, specifically the acting, is just phenomenal. The score is incredible. It's scary. It's got a little bit of gore there as you need it. It's shocking. It's pretty close to perfect. So yeah, 9.5 out of 10 for me. Candy, what are you rating this movie?
Well, mine won't be a surprise. I have to give it a 10 out of 10. It's one of those films like you have to really nitpick to find even the slightest thing that you don't like
Yeah.
about it. It's so good. It's so well done. We've got great acting. I think, some of the good films, some of the indies and the A24 type films that we're getting now are doing what The Exorcist did, which is has great acting, a lot of emotional tension, a lot of um there's drama with it. There's a lot to it. It's not just in your face jump scares kind of thing. So we're coming back to that, and it does that, and it's every film has almost referenced it in one way or another. And any possession film, absolutely, you're just all you think about is The Exorcist. So
Yeah.
if it's that good that anytime you watch any movie with any type of possession or demonic something, you think about how good The Exorcist is. That tells you something. So like The Exorcist is like it's not even like my favorite horror movie, but I can't give it lower than a 10. It is perfect. It's like a gold standard. It is, one of the scariest movies of all time. To this day, I'll die on that hill. So, time hasn't weathered me. I still am fucking flipped out by this movie, and I love it. It feels good because as horror fans, we want to be scared, and I like the emotional tolls and just everything about it. Everything about it's great. The soundtrack, the acting, like I can't say enough good things. So all of the things are good, basically.
Awesome.
10 out of
Awesome.
10.
10 out of 10. Right, Nico, here you go. This is your big moment. You're finally going last on a scoring. What are you going to rate The Exorcist?
So I'm giving it a 9 because
Oh,
there is a few other movies that I prefer over it. In fact, a good few movies that I prefer over it. And I genuinely, the ending, every time I rewatch it, the ending seems quicker to me, and it just ruins it a little bit more every time I watch it. So I tend not to watch it that much. So, but it's still a great movie, and it is just that one thing that just does it for me.
do you think that ended like it's maybe like one of those things where you get like a little bug in your head about something, and you maybe spot something that's not like a
Yeah,
huge issue, but because you've spotted it and it's just like nitpicking away at you, and it's like it gets worse and worse and worse and worse like as time goes on.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like it, genuinely, every time I rewatch it, it annoys me just that little bit more.
Oh, I feel like that every time I see you, Nico.
Yeah, and I still piss you off at the pub quiz.
Yeah, I know. Anyways, right. So 9 out of 10 there from Nico. About like that's the high scores all round. It's from everyone, from us, from the listeners. It's clearly a very very beloved movie. However, its overall score, given all those critic scores plus ours and the listener scores, gives The Exorcist an average of 8.9 out of 10, and it's now in sixth place of the 102 movies we've now covered on the show. It doesn't make it into the top 10, the top 5, sorry.
I was actually thinking it was going to be top three, so that kind of shocks me.
Yeah,
I thought it'd be top 5.
I mean, at
just
least top five, yeah. But I was like
just
pretty sure at top three.
I mean, again, we've talked about this when we've talked about the top end of the leaderboard. If you look at the movies that are like just above it and the movies that are just below it, we are talking like the powerhouses of horror here. It's there's 5 movies above it, and those movies are Aliens, Alien, Jaws, Halloween, and Let the Right One In. which held it off there in 5th place. Those are 5 fantastic movies. And if you look just below it,
Yes, they are.
You know, if you look just below it, it's Misery, The Thing, Reanimator, The Omen, A Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, but like we are talking like the powerhouses of horror movies here. So it's no surprise.
Yeah.
So it isn't that surprising to me that it hasn't broken the top 5 because there's so little in between these movies. If you look through our top 10, you know, Aliens still holds top spot with a 9.3. But The Omen has an 8.5 in 10th place, so there's less than 1 full point in between our entire top 10. That's how tight it is up there now. So
Yeah.
being in 6th place, I think, is no shame. And I think, listen, we're now getting to the stage of doing these movies where breaking in, we're talking about things knocking off number 1 spot's going to be really difficult. Getting into that top 5 clearly is also going to be incredibly difficult because of the quality of movies that we've now reviewed as well. So 6th place for The Exorcist. I think that's going to upset some people, to be honest. I think we might have some people being like, what the fuck? I certainly think we'll have people being, what the fuck? Why is Let the Right One in above it? But I stand by all of our scorings for Let the Right One in.
I stand by that one because
Yeah.
it's like a fucking poem of a movie. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So
Superb.
That is it for the review portion of this episode. Candy, I don't know if you have your scorecards available, but if you do, we can do another little catch up for you. So I've picked the 3 movies out this week already, and as per usual, I've tried to go for one that's nearer the top and nearer the middle and nearer the bottom. So we'll start off with the one that's nearer the top. I say top. It's currently sitting in 34th place on our leaderboard, and
We're near the fucking top.
I mean, it's top 3rd. Can you give us your score for the 2007 anthology Trick or Treat?
I give it a 7.5.
Okay.
I wanted it to be better, but it was still pretty good.
Okay, well that's exactly the score that Nico gave it. You also gave it a 7.5.
That's what I was laughing at there.
I'm
like, I said that.
I gave it a 9. I fucking love that movie. I love that movie so fucking.
It was good,
so
but
fucking
every anthology gets measured next to Creepshow for me.
I get that. I definitely get that.
You're either Creepshow or you're not Creepshow.
Trick or Treat, so you're 7.5. It doesn't actually change its overall score. Its overall score remains a 7.7, and it also doesn't change its position. I think you did one of those last week where it didn't change its position as well, so it stays in 34th.
Yeah, like usually mine are like wild.
Yeah, so it stays in 34th place. We'll go on then to the next one. So this one's in 58th place. Can you give us your score for The Faculty? We talked about it briefly last week when we were talking about revisions.
So I gave The Faculty a 7, and that's high from me. I think that the movie had potential, and I like the references to the to Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I overall like the cast. I love Clea Duvall. I love Elijah Wood, Josh Hartnett, whatever. Bonky Johnson, I think I love her. Like, she's hot. I love her and everything. But overall, I mean, a 7 was high for me. It was one of those like post Scream. Look, because like I worked in at a video store, so every fucking cover looked like Scream, and so it had all the little cast and what the fuck was Usher doing in there? Like, you know, I don't know. It was good for what it was, but it wasn't.
I quite like Usher.
But I had to. I mean, I don't know, but he just, I don't know. He didn't need to be in that movie. So yeah, The Faculty gets a higher score than most of them from that ilk do, but yeah, it could have been a little bit better.
It's funny because I also gave The Faculty a 7, so we're in agreement with that, and you're pretty much bang on once again with what the overall rating was. So I think this is you know, it's a good positive. I can't think of the word now, but it essentially is proving that I think our leaderboard is generally pretty right on with, you know, where certain movies are. Because once again, you gave us
a couple of wild cards that I in my list, but overall,
there will still be a few, I'm sure, to come. But once again, The Faculty remains at 6.8 and remains in 58th place. So that's 2 where it's managed to maintain its place. The final one in 97th place is The Human Centipede. Remember that episode, Nico?
Yeah.
All right. The Human Centipede gets a 1.5 for me. It was stupid for the sake of being stupid. It was, you know what I mean? Like, it's like it's sort of like I don't know how to put this, so maybe I shouldn't tell that story. It's about porn.
Oh,
No,
you
tell
can't. Oh, come on.
Okay. Well, okay, so my kids read manga, and there was this one called Dick Fight Island, and we it was wrapped in
Called
plastic,
what?
right? And we spent a lot of time in Barnes Noble, and I was like, and my daughter was talking about it. I'm like, that's not fucking real. And I picked it up, and I'm like, it's real. And I'm like, okay, there's 2 volumes, and we talked about it for months, and finally she bought them for me, and I was reading it. She said my face was hilarious. I'm like, it's clearly they came up with the porn idea first and then tried to make a story around it. And the human centipede very much feels like that. They had this like, let's do this ass to mouth thing. We got to make a story around this though. Like they sort of like this idea first. Like obviously, like with the Dick Fight Island, they had like they're these warriors and they're battling by fucking each other. Okay, so I read them. Yes, I love reading erotica. The weirder, the better. I have a collection.
I feel like
So
I feel like Dick Fight Island is just like a porn parody of Battle Royale. That's what I have in my
That's
head.
what I was thinking. That's what I had in my head as well.
That's all I have in my
and
head.
it is
That's
just
exact same.
guys fucking each other and you lose if you come, basically. Yeah, I'm sitting at the fucking dinner table reading these. Like,
Oh.
and the kids are just like your face. I'm like, I've read some
Whoever
stuff.
comes first loses.
It's a fun
Wow.
game to
Like
play, I guess.
soggy biscuit all over again.
Oh no! Right. On.
Oh, Candy, please tell me you know what soggy biscuit is.
I do know it's soggy biscuit. Circle jerk.
That's alright.
Circle,
Yeah.
No,
circle
I've been
jerk.
around the block a little bit.
It's not a circle jerk. It's whoever.
It involves a circle jerk.
Well, yeah, I mean, essentially, but I do know what it means. I do. I mean, I'm not a dude, but I do know what it's about. But yeah, so like that's what I feel like with the human centipede. It was the freshest thing in my mind was that they have a concept and then they got to try to write a story around it, and they don't do a very good job.
Oh.
Because like the concept with Dick Fight Island is just dudes fucking each other, and they're like, but let's like make them warriors or something. I mean, I don't know. We got to put a story in there. So yeah, so that's how I feel about the human centipede. I fucking hate it. It's stupid, and everybody was like, "Oh, it's so great." And there are people like absolutely worship it, and those people, I just
Yeah.
look sideways.
So
like,
Nico, you hated it as well. You gave it a 3. I give it a
Yeah.
5. I give it a 5.5.
I get a 1.5.
Wait until we do the sequels.
It's
That's
Dick
all.
Fight Island all over again for me.
I think.
Oh, wait till do sequel. No, no.
No,
Oh,
no.
Oh, this is
Candy,
this is my tip for
Candy.
time.
Candy, I will not pick the second one. I know who will though, and he's fucking laughing his tits off right now.
I won't pick the second
That's
one.
all right. I got some cards
evil
up my
laugh.
sleeve.
I
I got
will-
some cards up my sleeve that I can look at.
I won't pick the second one. I'll pick the third one. Anyways, your 1.5 for the human centipede.
The third one, the prison one.
Yes.
Oh Jesus.
At
At least there's eye candy in that one.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that. I literally was about to bring up you'll probably like it because there's a porn star in it, but it's we'll move on. Your 1.5 does drop this one from an average score of 4 down to a 3.7. It also drops it 1 place, but that dropping it of 1 place does put it back into the bottom 5. So it's down in 98th place. The human centipede had just managed to escape. It's back down there. So long time.
I'm sure it likes being in the bottom.
I'm sure it does. Oh.
You just got that. Oh my god, I can't believe you just got that. Really? Come on, Ian.
I wonder how many listeners are gonna go look up Dick Fight Island.
I'm
sorry.
Say it one more time just so they know. Say it one more time. What's it called again?
Dick Fight Island. No, please, somebody share their trauma with me.
Can you tell me? Is it like Battle Royale, but just dick fighting?
Yeah, they have like armor that they. Yeah,
What armor have you got for it? You know what I mean?
I'm just gonna say, look up some images.
Okay.
I'm just thinking it's a chastity belt for the armor. That's it.
No, quite the opposite.
Oh
Okay.
Jesus.
Okay. Right.
Ian's like, God damn it! Why did I have her on the show?
I need this show. I need this episode to be over now.
Yeah, because he's away to look up Dick Fight Island.
Yeah, I've got my tissues at the ready. Anyways, yes. So
Entering the arena, Ian, Dick Fight Island.
Human Centipede back in our bottom 5. It knocks Long Time Dead back out of our bottom 5, so that's gone up a spot, which is good for that movie, I guess. That's very much a nothing movie. But yeah, so that is our updated leaderboard. Thank you for those scores, Candy. We'll get another 3 off of you next week. You're slowly starting to fill up that board. More and more movies every week are getting filled up, so our board is taking a new shape. And you've had a positive effect on some good movies. I'm very happy with your score for Terrifier, for example. Just to get another mention of it in, just to annoy you, Nico. But
that's not annoy me. It's just you genuinely can't do it. You can't go one episode without mentioning Terrifier.
I know. It's
you were like that for ages with Child's Play.
It's my thing now. It's you know
it's also kind of my thing too.
At least it's evolved from Child's Play.
I'm gonna get shirts on it and just with me and Art the Clown. I don't know. Anyways, that is it for this week's show. Up next, it's back to Candy's pick next week. Candy, what are we reviewing?
We are reviewing. Oh god, I fucked that up. Sorry, I was eating a breadstick. But we're gonna do the Lucio Fulci classic Zombie, or AKA Zombie 2. So I'm really excited to talk about that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a really great one. I'm really looking forward to rewatching it before next week, and then we'll go.
It's going to be so hard for me to pick a shirt.
I
have like 10 shirts of it, and each one is gorier than the one before it. And I'm going to have a fashion emergency before that show.
Just constantly.
I got really girly.
Just constantly going off screen and doing a quick costume change, and then coming back and seeing if people notice.
You'll be like, oh yeah, here's this one. I got this one. Horror Hound 2018.
Anyways, yes, so it's Zombie next week. Thank you, though, to Candy and Nico for joining me once again on the show.
Thanks for having me on again.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Don't forget...
Sorry for bringing up porn.
That's all right.
Bring it up more often.
Nico, if you didn't, he would.
Exactly. I'm not the only pervert here.
So yeah, if you want to follow us on our social medias, you can do so. We're on Twitter @DamnPodcast, Facebook and Instagram is Pod of the Damned. Email us at podofthedamned@gmail.com. Subscribe to us on our Patreon, patreon.com/podofthedamned. Just £1 in the UK to subscribe to that, $1.50 in the United States. You get early access to all of our video content, and we'll be bringing you some exclusives there as well. And we occasionally do a little extra recording here and there. I think we did one on, was it Tenebrae episode we recorded?
Grindhouse.
Grindhouse, yeah. We did a little bit.
Yeah, and I've got a lot of Fulci stuff, so I mean, there's plenty that we can.
So we'll probably be
just
doing
about any movie we cover. I probably got some memorabilia from it.
So we'll be releasing little after the record button stop style episodes where we kind of do a little bit of a debrief and then just have a little chit chat. So there's all of that going on there as well. Candy, where can you be found again?
You can find me at Candy Final Girl on X, at Candy the Final Girl on Instagram. All of my links are in my link tree, which is linktree/Candy the Final Girl. And I also am on Pod of the Damned X.
Yeah. Nico, where can you be found?
In Aberdeen.
There you go. I think I want to.
Mainly in Aberdeen.
I kind of want to go back through the episodes now and find out how many times you've made that joke in the lifetime of this podcast.
Mainly in Scotland, but occasionally abroad.
Okay. So yeah, thank you to you guys.
In about a week, you can find me in Las Vegas because I'm going on vacation.
Nice.
I could just say every weekend in Sing City.
Hey, very good. No, I'm gonna cut that. It's fine. I can't.
Why? You used to work there. You liked it.
I do, but I now also work for a different venue.
Which venues that you work for?
I work for the Triple Kirks. No, I'm gonna dox myself. Anyways.
So hold on, did you get a plug there with me bringing that up? So you should leave both in. See?
No, I'm going to cut both of them. It's fine. Anyways. But yes, thank you to all of our listeners for downloading and listening to this episode. And until next week on Pod of the Damned, just remember, you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you do,
and you're damned if you don't.
Fuck you, Nico. You're damned if you don't.